So we're continuing with the personal loans section, and we are going to use the chart. Now, I printed you guys a copy of the chart. I know it didn't print super clear, but on a test or on your worksheets or on your quizzes, it's nice and crisp so you can see the numbers nice. All right. Here's the situation. John's purchasing a new car, which costs $42,000. He has a down payment. Okay, so this is a down payment question. And off to the side, I want you to write this little step here. With a down payment question, you figure out the cost with tax. And then we subtract the down payment. So make a note there. And I'll show you what to do when we have a trade-in in the next example and why. We'll discuss why we do it this way. Okay. He has a down payment of $5,000. He takes out a personal loan from his local bank at an annual rate, 5.75%. So I come down the interest rate column until I hit 5.75%. And the amortization period, he's going to borrow it for 4 years. I'm going to go across until I hit the 4-year column. And then I'm going to go and find out where those numbers meet. 5.75% meets 4 years at $23.37. So that's the number I'm going to use after I figure this out. Now, you might be tight for space. So you might not have a whole lot of room in here. So maybe do part 1 somewhere where there's a little more space. I can move this stuff around, you can't. Okay. The first thing I need to do is I need to figure out what John would pay for the car with tax. So step 1, it's the $42,000. And I'm going to multiply it by, what would I multiply it by if the tax is 15%? Think about what we did in chapter 2. Multiply it by 1.15. Awesome. Because the tax is going to increase the price. So does everyone understand where this number came from? I just went 100% plus 15%. Tax increases, that gives me 115%. As a decimal, 1.15. What's 42,000 times 1.15? I get $48,300. That's what the car is going to cost with tax. Now, he doesn't have to borrow $48,300. He actually has how much money saved? How much does he have for a down payment? $5,000. So I am going to subtract the down payment. So he's going to walk into the dealership. He owes them $48,300. He's going to subtract $5,000. And that means he still owes $43,300. Okay? This becomes the principal. That right there is what he needs to borrow. So he doesn't have that money. He's got to borrow it. And he's going to borrow it from his credit union or his bank. Now, these next 2 steps to figure out his monthly payment, basically what I've done up to this point is I've worked myself to this situation. What did I do in the last example when Troy needed to borrow $5,620? I divided it by what? 1,000, because the loan payment calculator is based on a per $1,000 borrowed. And then I took that answer and I multiplied it by the $18.87 because he was borrowing at 5% for 5 years. So I'm going to do the same thing with John. I need to borrow $43,300. So this is the monthly payment part. Step 3, it's the old step 1. I take the $43,300 and I multiply it by 1,000. 43,300. And that's just going to swing the decimal place 1, 2, 3 spots to the left. And what does it equal? 43.3. And then what do I do with the 43.3? What would step 4 be? Multiply it by 23.37. So the 43.3 is going to get multiplied by the 23.37. And again, I didn't just pull that number out of thin air. Why am I using the 23.37? Because he's borrowing at 5.75% for 4 years. That's where they meet. In the previous example with Troy, I used 5% in 5 years. That's why I used the 1887. So you take the amount they borrow, divide it by 1,000, and then you multiply it by the number from the chart. When there is a down payment involved, you have to do 2 things first. You figure out the cost with tax, then you subtract the down payment. Yes. Test is not tomorrow. No, we're going to do either Wednesday or Thursday. Cool? All right. 43.3 times 23.37. How much is he going to pay a month for the car? That's right, $1,011.92 per month. So that's his monthly payment. What am I going to do in step 2? If I want to calculate how much he pays in total over 4 years. 4 years would be how many months? 48 months. Nice. How do you figure it out? How do you change years to months? Multiply by what? 12. If I want to know his total, the total amount he's going to pay back, I'm going to take the $1,011.92 per month, and I'm going to multiply it by 48 months. The months will cancel. And what's 1,011.92 times 48? I've got 48,000. $48,572.16. Now, it says calculate the finance charge on the loan. So that's where I take the amount he pays back, $48,572.16, but I got to subtract the amount he borrowed. How much did he borrow? What number represents the amount he borrowed? It's 43,300. Okay? I'm going to subtract the $43,300. And when I do that, this is going to be $5,272.16. And that represents the interest on his loan. Fair enough? Sometimes they'll ask you a fourth question, or like another type of question is, like, it might say, what did the vehicle cost him in total? What would I do then? What would I do with this number? I know he's paying that back over 48, but is there an amount of money that he already paid at the time of purchase? What did he throw down? How much was his down payment? $5,000. So his total payment would actually be $53,572.16. It'd be this much. That's what he paid back for the loan, but he also threw down $5,000 in cash. So if it ever asks you for the total amount he paid out of pocket, it'd be what you pay back on the loan plus your down payment. Didn't ask us that in this question. So there's the first example. The second example, is everyone okay with that? Second example, very similar question. I'm going to give myself some space because the first step when it comes to calculating his monthly payment will be to do those 4 steps. They just get done in a different order. Steps 3 and 4, the monthly payment thing, will be the amount he borrows divided by 1,000, and then I'll multiply that answer by some number from this chart. But the first 2 steps, they flip, they reverse. Okay? You want to just wait till I finish this one? So Jack is purchasing a new trailer which costs $36,000. He is trading in his old trailer, which they valued at $15,000. He takes out a personal loan from his local bank at an annual rate of 5.25%. So we can find that, 5.25%. And 5 years, that's the amortization period. That's how long he's going to borrow for. Where does 5.25 meet 5? What's the magic number from the chart? $1,899. Now, is this a down payment? No, it's a trade-in. And with the trade-in question, we flip steps 1 and 2. Step 1 is to subtract the trade-in. And then we figure out the cost with tax. So what did I write here? Figure out the cost with tax, number 1. Figure out cost with tax. And the reason that is because you've already purchased a trailer, you've paid the tax on that trailer. So you get a little break with a trade-in. So if you're trying to remember the order, think about this. If you already own the item that you're going to trade in, you've already paid the tax on that. So you subtract first. So you subtract the trade-in, and then you figure out the cost with tax. So step 1, I am going to take the $36,000. That's what the new trailer costs. And I'm going to subtract the trade-in. What is my trade-in value? $15,000. What's that leave me with? 36 minus 15. We good with 21,000? That's step 1. Now, he doesn't need to borrow 21,000. He needs to borrow 21,000 plus tax. So once again, 15% HST, that's 100% plus 15% because tax increases the price. It gives me 115%, which would be what as a decimal? What's 115% as a decimal? 1.15. So I'm going to multiply $21,000 by 1.15, and this would tell me 21,000 times 1.15. I end up with $24,150. That's how much your boy Jack needs to borrow. What do I do with that number to figure out his monthly payment? They're the same as steps 3 and 4 from the last example, and they're the same as steps 1 and 2 from the first example. I'm going to take the $24,150. That's what I need to borrow. and I'm going to divide it by what? 1,000. Why do I divide by 1,000? Because the personal loan payment calculator tells me to do that. It says per $1,000 borrowed. Swing the decimal place 1, 2, 3 spots to the left. Do you agree that I get 24.15? Or you could just do that on your calculator. And then what do you do in step 4? What do I do with the 24.15? Anyone? What do I do with the 43.3? I multiplied it by 23.37. Where's that number coming from? From the chart. Okay. Is it 23.37 again? No, because this guy's borrowing at 5.25% for 5 years. What's the magic number from the chart? 1899. And if I go 24.15 times 18.99, I'm going to get $458. And I'll round to the nearest cent, so it'll be 61 cents per month. Okay, how do I figure out how much he pays back in 5 years? I got to change 5 years to months. 5 times 12, 60 months. You good at that? And then what am I going to do with this number 60 and this number 458.61? I multiply them together. And the months go away. They cancel. What's 458.61 times 60? It's $27,516.60. That's what he owes, or that's what he's going to pay back on his loan. So he's borrowing $24,150, and he's going to pay back $27,560.60. $516.60. What's the finance charge? It's $27,516.60. What do I subtract? How much did he borrow? Which one? Not 36,000. Look at how much did he borrow in this one? Look at the last example. I subtracted the 43,300. Subtracted this number right here. What's that number, or what's in place there? How much did he borrow? $24,150. Why didn't he borrow $36,000? Because he had a trade-in. When you're doing the trade-in, subtract it first, then do the tax. When you're doing a down payment, do the tax first, then subtract the down payment. Why the reverse in the order? Because if you already own an item, something that you're going to trade in, you've already paid tax on it. You get a little tax break. 27,516.6 minus 24,150 gives me $3,366.60. And that is the finance charge. That's the cost of borrowing. That's the interest on the loan. Cool? All right. You can go to work on the sheet that I gave you, the long sheet, and the answers, I'll put them up here on the board.